Supervised chats in Microsoft Teams are powerful, but only if you implement them correctly. Most organizations turn them on without understanding the limitations. They only apply to new chats. Existing one-on-one or group chats remains unsupervised, so they will continue to work the way they have been working. The policy ranking must be assigned carefully. So there is a whole strategy and planning that you need to do to roll out supervised chats into your environments. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through to the strategy and a rollout plan that you can actually follow to implement or roll out supervised chats in your environment. One of the limitations of supervised chat is that it only applies to the new chats that you actually create after enabling supervised chat. If you have any pre-existing chats, those chats will continue to work unsupervised. So those could be one-on-one chats or group chats. Another limitation which basically applies the supervised chat is enabled, that if your teacher has created a group chat with your students, then the teacher won't be able to leave that group chat. I will talk more about how you can actually tackle this situation in the coming section. The first part of your rollout strategy is to basically clean up and consolidation. This is about cleaning up and consolidating your existing messaging policies. So in my case, I have about 5 policies. The global is a default policy, and I've created 4 custom policies. There is a teachers policy which is basically assigned to the teachers, and the chat is enabled. The student policy, chat is not allowed. This is assigned to a group of users where I don't want them to basically chat. So the chat is disabled. There is student policy where the chat is allowed, and this is assigned to a group of users. And in this case, I basically assigned it to year 7 group, year 12 group, and year 5 group. So you might have a similar situation where you have created a messaging chat policy and you have assigned to a different group levels or maybe to all of your students within your whole school. And then the last policy I have is the student chat enable policy for year 10. So what I've done is I've created this custom policy, and instead of a group, I've assigned this directly to the users. This might be the same case for you where you have number of policies, which is a mix of group assignments and direct user assignments. So when we talk about the cleanup and consolidation, you should start with the policies where you have direct user assignments, because direct user assignment policies takes precedence in messaging policies over the group assigned policies. So when you roll out supervised chat, you might not get expected results. So the best way is to basically clean up and consolidate. So you should, rather than using the direct user assignments, you should create groups for these policies. So in my case, I've already created a group in my intro ID. So if I search for year level, that's the wrong group. So if I go to groups and search for year level, so I've already created a year 10 group, and I have already added the members into this policy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my messaging team policies, and in the messaging policies, what I'm going to do is where I have this student policy where the chat is allowed, I'm going to put that group into this policy. So I'll create add, and I'm going to then search for a group. That's a year 10 group, and I'm going to select a policy, which is the student policy chat allowed, which is basically a common policy which you can create for all of your year levels. So you can pretty much put all of your groups into this policy where you want to have the same sort of features enabled for your students to allow the chat. So I'll select that policy, and I won't give it a rank 1, because rank 1, I want the other policies to take precedence. So I'm basically going to say rank 6, one of the rank after these already assigned groups. So I'll say apply and confirm. Now, this way, what I have done is I've consolidated that custom policy into this policy by creating a year 10 group and assign into this policy. We need to basically go back to view users, and I'm going to select all the users, and I'm going to click edit settings. And what I'm going to then do is go to the messaging policies, and I will say assign this a global default policies. I won't assign this a student policy chat allowed, because if you do that, you are basically doing a direct assignment to all of these users within that policy. By assigning default, what we're saying is if these users do not exist any part of any group, then assign this global default policy. But in our case, they already belong to a group. So when we assign this global policy to them, all of these students automatically will inherit this student policy chat allowed. So let's see what happens. So we select global policy and we say apply and confirm. So this policy is now applied to these users. And if we go back to Abhishek, for example, let's just click on view policies and we scroll down and have a look at the messaging policies. You will now see that the policy has changed, although we assigned the global policy, but because these users already existed as part of an existing group, now this new policy is assigned to them where that group assignment was happened. So if I expand this, you will see that effective policy is student policy chat allowed and the group assignment is year 10 group. So now let's go back to our messaging policies. Click on the view groups. We will see that year 10 is now added to these policies. So, and if you click on view users on the student chat enabled policy for year 10, we will see that there are actually no users assigned to this policy and we can actually safely delete this policy. So what we're going to do is going to messaging policies, select this policy, and we're going to delete this policy. This way, what we have done is we basically cleaned up our messaging policies and we have consolidated our policies and done the group assignments. So we consolidated into, one policy, student policy chat allowed. So we have all our groups in there. Now, one thing you probably need to be aware of, which you already might be doing because you already have an existing environment, the rankings of the policy is basically quite important. So make sure you have the messaging policies with correct rankings. So what happens is policies with the highest ranking will basically take precedence. So in my case, if you click on group policy assignment, so what happens is whenever you assign a group to a policy, you'll have to select a rank. So in my case, I have this policy where the chat is not allowed for students, and I've assigned this policy to a group, which is restricted student group, and these students will not be allowed to chat. Now, some of these students might be part of your, other policies. So for example, one of the students in this restricted chat might be from year 7 or and also from year 12 or from year 5, right? So these could be individual students added into these groups from different year levels. So why I have ranked this policy 1 is because I want to restrict these users. So in Teams, if I rank it 1, so by default, these users, because this policy will take precedence, and the users which are added into the groups will be disabled for chat. It doesn't really matter if they are enabled for chat through other policies. Because why it doesn't matter is because this policy is now taking precedence. All the other policies are, starts from rank 3, 4, 5. So the rank 1 is going to take precedence, is going to disable user. And then if those users are part of a year 7, then they won't be impacted because they are already disabled by this policy. When it comes to enabling supervised chat, there are a couple of places you'll have to enable the supervised chat. Number 1 is under Teams settings. So under Teams settings, if you scroll down, there's basically a safety and communications section, and you have to enable role-based chat permissions. Now, you only want to enable this once you have enabled the chat permissions within your messaging policies. So this is one setting that you have to do, but we'll do this after we have changed chat permission policies. So we go back to our messaging policies. Now, if I go to the messaging policies, so for example, let's have a look at our teachers policy. If I click on teachers policy and scroll down, there is a section which basically says chat permission roles. Now, this particular setting basically is for your supervised chat, right? So it has 3 sets of permissions: full permissions, limited permissions, and restricted permissions. It's quite important to understand about these permissions. Full permissions, you will basically assign to your teachers' policies. So what happens with the full permissions is teachers will be able to chat with students. So basically, teachers will be able to chat with anyone who's assigned the limited permissions and restricted permissions, right? By default, when you create a messaging policy, you basically, it creates the messaging policy with a restricted permission. So for teachers, we're going to change this to full permissions, and then we're going to select save. So in my case, this is already full permission, so I don't need to save it, and I cancel and go back. Then comes to the student policy chat allowed. So I'm going to click on this policy, and I'm going to scroll down, and you will see that I've assigned restricted permissions to this policy. Why I assigned restricted permissions is because with restricted permissions, the students will not be able to chat with each other. So whoever is assigned this policy, those users will be restricted to chat with each other unless there is a chat which is initiated by a teacher, or unless a teacher is present in that chat, right? So that's basically a supervised chat. So, and then we have the limited permissions role. Now, this role you will assign to the users where you want them to chat between each other, and they can also chat with the full permission users, right? So, in a nutshell, full permission users can chat with anyone. Limited permission users can chat among themselves and with the full permission users. Restricted permission users can basically chat with the full permission users. They cannot initiate chats between, right? So for students, this is what we want. So we want assign a restricted permissions role for the student policy, right? And then you click on save. In my case, I'll cancel because this is already assigned. And then I have student policy where the chat is not allowed. So when I click on this policy, you will see that the chat is basically disabled for this policy. So I'm just going to keep it to restricted permissions because I have to choose one. So restricted is the least permissions. So I'll choose that. So, you save it. So I'm just going to come out of it. So now that you have assigned permission roles to all of your messaging policies, what you have to do to enable chat now is you go back to the team settings and then scroll down, and then you are going to enable this role-based chat permissions and click save and confirm. Now, this rollout, depending upon how many users you have in your environment, it could take up to 24 hours. So, you just have to stay back and relax. Sometimes it kicks in very fast. In my case, I don't have many users, so it will probably kick in very soon. Supervised chat is now enabled. So before I start the conversations, I just want to show you what groups are there so you understand. So year 12 groups, I have Andrew Smith, Peter Smith, and Sam Smith, right? So let's try to chat as Peter Smith with Andrew Smith and see what happens. I am now into my chat window, and I'm actually logged in as Peter Smith. As you can see, there is an existing chat with Sam Smith. So let's just see what happens with an existing chat. So if I click on Sam Smith and I say hello, so this message is basically delivered. Now, as I mentioned before, this is one of the limitations. Existing chats will continue to work unless you basically clear those chats from both sides. Because if you just clear it from one side, the other person can initiate a chat and then it will be the same old chat thread. So it will continue to work unsupervised. So if I now, let's just say, clear this chat, remove chat history for Sam Smith, right? And now I try to chat with Sam Smith. I haven't cleared it with Sam Smith, but I've cleared this window from Peter Smith. So Peter is now going to basically start a new chat thread, right? So if I say hello, the supervised chat will now kick in. It'll basically say we could not create the chat. But if Sam Smith logs in, so let's just say I try to log in as Sam Smith and I go there and he was already, so this is the chat window. He was already talking to Peter and I say hello. And so this message delivered, right? So if I go back to Peter Smith now, and I'll see a message there, Sam Smith. So because this message came from old Windows, so right? So if I reply to this, I am fine. So this message is delivered. So what I'm trying to say that the old chat windows continue to work unless you delete or clear those chat windows from both the users, right? Now, let's try to chat with a new user. I haven't been talking to Andrew Smith. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a chat with Andrew Smith, who's a new user. I have never spoken to Andrew before. So I'm just going to say hello. And I will be now enforced with the supervised chat policy. So I won't be able to chat with Peter Smith. So this is one-on-one chat. The only way I can chat to Andrew Smith if the chat was initiated by my teacher, right? So before we go to the teacher part, let's have a look at the the group chat as well. So this is the group chat which was created before we enable the supervised chat, and it has 3 members. So this chat will also continue to work, and it unsupervised because this was an old chat thread. So what I need to do now, or probably you need to do, is you need to make sure that the membership is changed. You probably need to have your members, exit from that chat so that when they try to create a new group chat, they are restricted by the supervised chat. And this has to be done from all of the users. Although this user has already left the chat, but there are other two users in this chat. So these are the Adrian and Amit. So the chat between them will continue to happen unsupervised. So you need to make sure that those users also leave those chats. If Peter tries to contact a teacher, so TechByTosh is basically a teacher. A full permission policy is applied to this, a teacher's policy. So I want to say, hello Tosh, and I send this message. Now this message delivers to your teacher. So a restricted permission user can chat with a teacher or with a person with full permissions, right? So student to teacher chat is happening. There are no restrictions. So let's log in as TechByTosh, so who's basically a teacher. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to log in as TechByTosh, basically a teacher. Now, teacher can obviously chat with any student. So I'm going to chat with, for example, Sam Smith, and I'm going to say, hello. Now this chat goes, right? If a teacher wants, they can basically now create a combined supervised chat between those two students so that they can actually continue to have discussions, because two students cannot talk to each other because of the restricted permissions have been applied to those users. So what we have to do is we need to click add users, start a group chat, and I'm going to invite Peter into this group chat, Peter Smith, and I'm going to create. Now this chat is created. I'll post a message so that this group basically appears within the chat so we can identify it. Hello, and this has gone, and now I'm going to log in as Peter Smith, and I can see that there is a chat for Sam and TechByTosh. So in this chat, because a teacher is present and Sam Smith and Peter Smith both are the students, so I can actually talk to Sam Smith as a Peter Smith, right? And so as Sam can actually talk to me. So this is a supervised chat scenario where the both students are basically chatting to each other, and a teacher as a supervisor is basically present in this chat. Now, in this chat, because I'm logged in as a student, which is Peter Smith as a student, so if I try to basically remove the teacher from this chat and click on remove, supervised chat won't let me remove the teachers from this chat. If I log in as a teacher, which is Tosh, so I'll go back and log in as a teacher, and the teacher tries to remove him or herself from the chat. And let's just say I'm going to leave the chat and click leave. So supervised chat policy won't even let the teachers leave the chat. So these group chats will always be there between a teacher and students, like a group of students and a teacher, basically. But if a teacher wants, he can remove Sam Smith from this chat. So Sam is removed. So now the chat is only between a teacher and Peter. If we remove the chat history, then this way teacher can get removed from the chat. So teachers might have to kick out the students from those chats, and then they can basically remove the chat history. Let's talk about a staged rollout. Let's say you don't want to apply the supervised chat policy to all of your students in your school, but you only want to roll out in stages. Now that is possible with the supervised chats. It's all about the messaging policies and the chat permission roles. So in our scenario, as I explained, I have these chat policies, and I've already disabled the chat permissions under team settings. Let's say we are starting fresh, you haven't enabled supervised chat as yet, and you want to do it in stages. So role-based chat permissions is currently off, and you have these messaging policies. Now, in your scenario, for example, this chat is allowed, and this is currently assigned to group based on your year levels. And you only want to roll out supervised chat to year 12 groups. And by enabling that, you want to achieve that only year 12 students should be part of supervised chats. So for example, they shouldn't be able to talk to each other unless there is a teacher present, but you don't want to impact any other year levels. So they should continue to work the way they have been chatting with each other, right? So that is what we basically trying to achieve here. Now, to do that, what we're going to do is we first need to create a chat policy, a separate messaging policy, which we will use it as a supervised chat, right? So I'm going to go back and I'm going to click add, and I'm going to call this a supervised chat policy, right? And let's just say chat allowed, right? And we're going to enable the chat for this. And if you scroll down, we need to assign the restricted permissions because this policy will be applied to year 12 students. and we want them to be restricted in chatting to each other, right? So we click save. Now, this chat policy is created, but it is not currently assigned to any of the groups. Currently, the student chat policy allowed also has restricted chat permissions, and the new policy we created also has restricted chat permissions. So we're talking about a year 12 group. So first, we need to remove the group, year 12 group, from this policy, right? So I'm going to go there and I'm going to select year 12 and I'm going to remove year 12 from this policy. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the group policy assignment and I'm going to click on add. So once I add it, I'm going to search for year 12 group and I'm going to add year 12 group. I'll select the policy that we just created for supervised chat allowed. And in terms of the ranking, now you want this policy to obviously takes precedence, but you don't want it to be rank 1 because you still have the restricted student groups and those users should be disabled. So I'm going to rank this policy as 3 because once I assign it to 3, then this policy is kind of taking precedence over, the year 7, year 5, although it doesn't really matter because year 12 is not there and year 12 only be part of this policy. So, but make sure this is not rank 1. So in your case, you have to see what policies you have based on the ranks and then assign an appropriate rank. So year 12 is now assigned to supervised chat policy. But we can't just go and enable supervised chat from team settings as yet. The purpose for this exercise was the stage rollout. So year 12, we have assigned this policy. We want to restrict it. But before we enable the chat permissions under team settings, we have to think about how are we going to give the same experience which they previously had. So I'm talking about year 7, 5, and 10. We don't want to impact those users, right? So to do that, I'm going to go into the student policy chat allowed because they're part of this policy and the chat is allowed. And under the chat permission roles, I'm going to select limited permissions. So this way, what happens is when I apply limited permissions, this will enable these students to basically chat to each other without any restrictions. These users will also be able to chat with the fill permission users who are your teachers. But these users will not be able to chat with year 12 users because then the restrictions kicks in for year 12 users, right? So this is the thing which you need to assign to have the same sort of experience for your existing users. So, this really helps in stage rollout. So limited permissions, and I'm going to click save and confirm. Once this is done, then we're going to go back to our team settings and we're going to enable the chat role-based chat permission roles under safety and communication and click save and confirm. So if in future you have to apply a supervised chat to one of the other groups, for example, year 5 groups, all you then have to do is basically remove these users from the student policy chat allowed and assign this group to the supervised chat policy. There is no way to basically select this group and click edit and just change the policy. You have to remove it from an existing policy first and then you have to reassign to a new policy. So I can just quickly go and remove and confirm, and then I go back to my group policy assignments, click add, and I'll search for year 5 and select a new policy, and I select the supervised chat policy. In terms of the ranking, I'll give it 3, apply, confirm, and you will see that this year 5 is now assigned to supervised chat policy. So basically we have done a stage rollout for year 12 and year 5. So this is how you do a stage rollout for a supervised chat policy to basically take effect. If you want to see what is actually happening, whether it's been assigned or rolled out, you can always go back to the activity log. There will be a message appearing at the top, or you can click on your dashboard. And if you scroll down, you will see this activity log and click on view details. And from there, it will tell you what changes you have done and what is the status of your policy assignment. So currently this is rolling out to users. So once this is completed, then you will know that your policy has rolled out to users. So supervised chats really need some planning and strategy to roll out into your M365 environment. Let me know in comments if this strategy has worked out for you, or if you are doing something differently that you can share with. Well, that's it for today. I hope you liked the video. If you have any comments or feedback, please don't forget to put into the comment section. Do share the video and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching and I'll see you next time.